Hello world, welcome to another episode of my weekly rant dedicated to inspiring the change of mindsets, especially our African mindsets. Today I'm going to talk about my personal journey from Africa to America and then back home Africa. This is going to cover my experiences from small town Africa to the 13 years I spent in the US and all the changes I went through, and when I went back home I was changed, immensely changed, and I was a new person, and that is what gives me a lot of the ideas that I discuss on this channel every week. So let's start from the beginning. I was born in a small town in eastern Uganda, Iganga. I was born to very typical African parents. My mother and father never went to school, they were illiterate people. So I was brought up in a very traditional tribal way, and it was until I started schooling, learning my ABC, that society started modernizing me, and throughout the whole primary school and secondary school in Uganda, I would say this process of socializing or modernizing me, when I look back, was good in that I learned modern things, ideas, whatever, but also it was detrimental in the way the mindset or the mentality that I ended up inculcating. So for example, throughout primary and secondary school, you are always beaten when you speak your language. So you grow up wanting to speak English, and maybe English only. There are times when you just want to forget about your traditional language. Two, you grow up, or at least I grew up, yearning. My dream was to leave the country, to leave Africa and go to Europe, go to America. So you end up having these inferiority complexes about your language, about yourself, about your culture, about your heritage, and that is not healthy. So I grew with those backward, limiting, self-sabotaging mindsets. So when eventually after my high school I went to the US to complete the last 2 years of high school, it was a big change for me, psychologically, physically, and in every single way. The first year in the US was, I was physically in the US, but mentally, psychologically, I was still in Uganda. It wasn't until the second year that I broke loose and I started engaging the American society, and I started making friends, being active, making lots of trips all over New Mexico, Colorado, Arizona, and this whole process of cultural immersion, actively cultural immersion within the American society, lasted for about 4 years. So even the first 3 years of university in Pennsylvania, I was very active. I was part of a fraternity. I visited many other states. I went to Utah. I visited Colorado, Grand Canyon, in Arizona. I even visited other countries. I went to Canada. I went to Mexico, Chile, Brazil, Cuba, and all these experiences, whenever I came back, I would reflect on them, and sometimes I would write them, but the main thing I realized was that I could read about these places I was going to visit, and even when I was visiting there, so for example, when I was in Mexico City visiting the Pyramid of the Sun and the Moon, there are things you could read about the stories of the places that I was visiting. So eventually, after 4 years, I had to ask myself, did I want to stay in America or no, go back to Africa? And the answer was unequivocal, no. I did not want to live in America. Rather, I need to go back to Africa. But I had changed so much. How would I go back to Africa? That is when the idea of me writing my story, my narrative, came into my head. So I was like, everywhere I go, I'm able to read narratives about America, Europe, or wherever. But in Africa, we hardly have that culture of people writing about their towns and their stories and their narrations. So I was like, I'm going to go back to Africa, but with a written story. I don't want to just go and be like everyone else, just talking. I want to relate with people when they read what I've written, because the written word is more powerful and long-lasting. That is why we are able to read people who wrote ideas and narrations 500 years ago, 2,000 years ago. So when you write, it's more powerful than just talking and storytelling. So when I started writing my story, the first book I wrote was The Fourth Heritage. I wrote this book when I was living in Texas, and it is my summary of how I intellectually combined or integrated the triple heritages that we Africans have: our tribe, the foreign religion, and the colonial heritage. When I combine it in a new thing that I call the fourth heritage, it has given me immense freedom, freedom of thought, freedom of identity, and it's been powerful for me to identify as someone more than my tribe, more than my religion, more than the British colonial heritage. And this is very important because as Africans, when we're in America, the American society is very good at limiting our identity just to how we look, specifically our race or our color. And there are people who are comfortable with that, but personally, I was not comfortable with the fact that if anyone looked at me, the most important identity was the way I look or my race. I think that is debasing my personality, that is debasing my humanity. I'm more than how I look. I am deeper, I have something deeper, and that thing that I am is the African culture, the African relation, the African connection. And so that was one reason. The other reason why living in America, I had watched the series Roots, and there is that scene in which Kunta Kinte is made to renounce his name in order his master beats him up, and finally they cut off his foot, and then he gives in and renounces his name Kunta Kinte and becomes Toby. I had an overwhelming feeling when I watched that scene, because it got me thinking, you know what? I am still Kunta Kinte, I'm not yet Toby. So I still have my memory, my collective culture memory, and that is something that I need to celebrate, is something I need to write about, is something that I need to cherish. And so writing my book was also inspired by the fact that, you know what, I've not been Americanized so much that I've forgotten my relation, my land, my name. My name, Chiruna, means something, you know. So that was the first book. 2 years later, when I was living in Utah, I wrote the second book, The Fourth Republic. And then when I went back to Uganda, I wrote my last book, Beyond the Fourth Heritage. And when you combine these three books, they are all telling the same story, which is my narration of, yes, I was born in small town Africa. I've gone all over the world. I've studied, right? I've been all over Europe, America, South America, Asia. But we live in a world where us as Africans, we are made to think what is modern is foreign. We don't feel confident that we can own aspects of our modernity. So by me writing, of course writing is a very modern thing, but I write it in a way that I'm trying to show that I own this knowledge that I've learned in school. I own the experience that I've gone through everywhere I've been, and I have not lost my connection to my African roots and my African culture. And that keeps me going. It keeps me strong spiritually, or in my inner sense of being. And I hope other Africans out there, when you read my ideas, you get inspiration to stay true to who you are and to aspire to be modern and competitive in the modern world. But so you don't have to read all the three books, all the 1,000 pages. I have gone further to simplify all my ideas into a short paper I'm calling the Edison Framework. This EDSAC framework, you can get it for free on my website, www.fourthheritage.com. It's for free. But if you want to support me, you can go to Amazon and buy one of my 3 books. The EDSAC framework is ideas and in form of a framework that I believe we Africans can open our eyes to in order to solve what I call the African elite dilemma. The African elite dilemma is the fact that the more educated and advanced we get in the modern world, we Africans get cut off from our roots. It's a dilemma because it's not very easy to reconcile. Some people, when they realize it's a dilemma, they go backwards and they decide to have nothing to do with modernity and just want to be tribal people. Or other people, when the dilemma comes up, they decide to be Americans or Europeans and forget about their roots. I believe the best way for us is to be in the middle, whereby you can get the good or what is positive from your tribe, from your tradition, but also from the Western modern world. And you can be a modern African who is comfortable in both camps and hopefully productive, efficient, and who does not shun the modern world. The modern world has to be confronted. And so my ideas, I hope, a small contribution to us opening our minds to that idea of how to reconcile the modern world and the tradition. Thank you for watching. Remember to subscribe so every time a new video comes up, you are notified. And everything I'm doing on this channel is to inspire the change of mindsets. So remember, the struggle is to change our mindsets. Thank you.